try to get better at one thing every year. Just one major piece that you can add to the program every year, then you're going to just continue to get better. Your program's going to continue to get better. And that could be anything, you know, year 5, 6, 7, you're going to be rolling. You're going to have all these different pieces in place that are going to make a difference and hopefully make a difference in the win-loss column, or if not the win-loss column, then just the participation column. Welcome back, everyone. Today, Alex and I, we're going to be talking about what every coach faces, but not a lot of people talk about, and that's how to evolve as a coach. Both of us have been coaching for years now, and well, it's actually been a few years since we've released an episode on this channel, so we're here back again to talk about what's different now than it was back then, and really just how we've changed and evolved our style of coaching and just our leadership styles and all that kind of stuff. We'll be sharing the lessons we've learned, the mistakes we've made, and hopefully there's something that you can learn from today's episode. So if you too are serious about growing and improving as a coach, then you do not want to miss today's episode. All right, so here we are back with our first episode back in a couple years, and a lot's changed. Alex, I've been coaching Morro Bay High School girls varsity program for how many years now?
I'm going into my 6th year this year.
Okay, 6th year. And I think when we first started recording, you were maybe in your 2nd, 3rd year there. I know you coached at Cuesta College, the men, for a couple years as assistant and stuff. But what has all happened since, I guess, we last recorded?
Yeah, like you said, I think it was like my 3rd year, maybe 2nd or 3rd year. And there's actually been a lot of changes in the last couple of years. 2 of the last 3 years, we've won our league championship, which has been really cool. This past year, we had a really good season. We went to the CIF championship. We went to the 2nd round of the state playoffs. I've had a handful of players go on and play in college, so that's been exciting. And just kind of continue to try and build the program. So it's been a very exciting last couple of years, and I'm excited to be back here and being able to get this going again, because I've definitely missed it.
Nice. Couple league titles, CIF championship appearance, and you know, same kind of over on our end. You know, we've won a league title, I think, since then, and 2 times in the CIF finals. I guess you and I both are 0 for in the CIF finals, but hopefully one of us gets one here in the next couple of years. Okay, well, let's just dive right into the topic of today and how you've evolved. So let's just go back to before. Let's kind of do a before and after. So 3-4 years ago, before the league titles and the CIF championship, what kind of stuff have you improved on, would you say, since then?
Definitely like the efficiency in our program and being able to, I would say, delegate or give up some of my decision-making ability to my other coaches. The more I coached, the more I realized I was I wouldn't say a micromanager, but I like to have my hands on everything. And now I've had a coaching staff that's been working with me for a few years, and so by building trust with them and kind of teaching them how I do things, I can hand off stuff that in the past I used to do on my own. And that's been great for me because, as you know, as a head coach, you're already doing a million things. So anytime you can get something off your plate, it makes it a little easier. And it's been good for the program because realistically, when multiple people are working on different things, it's faster, it's more efficient, you probably get better results. So that's been definitely one of the big things that we've implemented lately.
Okay, and I would love to get an example. Like, what is one thing that you've delegated or that you've kind of given responsibility away to?
So it's funny because it's not something that's on the court, but nowadays I feel like in coaching high school, kind of like with college, like social media is a big part of sports. Like, you're going to promote your program, the kids want to be a part of it, right? And I used to do all of that by myself every day after every game. After the game, I'd hop on Twitter, or I'd hop on Instagram, create a post, and it didn't take a long time, but it was, it was just something that was tedious and I had to do, and the quality of it was okay. Well, my assistant coach also works in like the media department at our school, and so she can create like really nice curated posts and use Photoshop and kind of do all that for me. And so that is something that I've like 90% just kind of handed off to her, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. And that's just made things a lot simpler. And, I know it's not an X's and O's or on the court thing, but it's part of the running the program.
Nice. Yeah. And I hear a lot of coaches talk about delegating to their assistant coaches, and that's definitely something that I've struggled with for sure. And, I've heard some coaches say, I don't mess with out of bounds plays. Like, that's one thing that I give to my assistant. they can even, in the games, they're even calling what out-of-bounds play to run. They're coming up with new out-of-bounds plays. Is there anything like that you've tried to delegate out?
I don't know if I'm quite as good as delegating that type of stuff. I mean, I would say like in practices themselves and even in games, I'm getting more comfortable with just letting my coaches like talk to the players and say like, hey, if you know what you're saying, like you don't got to check with me, just go, just say what you got to say. And so that's always been something that's been fine with me. But I personally don't like giving up. Like I'm not going to run the out of bounds plays because to me, I'm like, well, what if we get into a late game situation and I got to run an out of bounds play? You know what I mean? Like, am I not going to know what we're doing and draw it up? I don't know that I could ever get to that much delegation, but I think more of like the day-to-day tasks or, you know, what we're going to put in a practice plan here, or what are we going to do with this type of thing. That stuff is where I've gotten better about delegating.
Yeah, and I think I want to get to that point too, where in practice, like I can just say, like, all right, you got 20 minutes. You know, like you are in charge. Like I try to split it up like this. Like I try to give one assistant coach rebounding. Like, hey, you're in charge of rebounding. Like not to the point to where like they're gonna do anything new or, you know, crazy. But when it comes to like running some drills and stuff, like I want to give them 20 minutes to, you know, kind of own that. And then when we're playing 5-on-5, scrimmaging and stuff like that, like I need their eyes on box outs and that kind of stuff. And then another assistant coach I try to give defense to. Now I'm saying this is all a little bit hypothetical because I say it every year. You have defense, you have rebounding, but then like when it comes down to it, I'm not like very often giving them their 20 minutes or whatever in practice. I want to get to that point where I can say, hey, you own defense, you know, and then during the games, they can come to me and say, hey, you know, this person should guard this person, right? Like I think assistant coaches, that's a good way to use assistant coaches is matchups, right? Like they should always be looking at matchups because I think when you're looking at what play am I going to call next or, you know, for me, I'm always watching like the offense step by step by step or the defense, what's happening play step by step by step. Like I'm not looking at every little detail out there. So I think, anyways, delegating some parts in that regard to assistant coaches can be helpful, but I just think I need to get better at that. I know at the college level, right, that is pretty common to where the assistant coaches are doing a little bit more of that. What was your experience at Cuesta? Was there any kind of you were an assistant coach. Like, what was that like?
I would say the more I was there, the longer I was there, the more trust that like Coach Blair had in me. I mean, obviously it helped that I was a former player, so he already had a certain level of trust in me, but you know, Casey, the assistant coach at the time, he's now the head coach for the women there. He and I have talked a bunch about, by the last couple of years when we were together, we've been doing it so much that like we were calling stuff from the sidelines, you know, like we were calling plays, we were saying substitutions. Now we weren't literally just throwing a kid in the game, but we would be like, hey coach, like so-and-so needs to get in or so-and-so needs to come out. And like 90% of the time or more, he'd be like, all right. And he trusted us, you know, to make those calls. But again, it came with that trust being built. Because when I first started, I was on the sideline, like, I wasn't saying much, you know, and I was just kind of sitting there watching, observing, and if I had something to say, I would go to Coach Blair and say, hey, here's something I see, can I say it? And eventually he started just being like, hey, you need to go say it. You know, he first would say it for me, and then eventually he's like, no, you need to go say it, and then it kind of built my voice, you know. So I would say I think you're right that assistant coaches definitely have that value in seeing the little things, because I'm the same way when I'm coaching. Like, I'm not watching like, oh, did you know, so-and-so miss a left hand, you know, closeout or whatever. Like, I'm not seeing those little details as easily. And so my assistants are very involved in that. I will say, like, they know if someone's tired, you know, maybe I didn't realize it. And then I look and I see her like running the very back end of the break. I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't even notice that. You're right. Okay, let me get her out. Or, you know, those types of details. I think assistant coaches are super valuable for that.
Yeah, and that's what I tell my assistants, like during the games. I'm like, just give me feedback constantly. Like, just constantly just be like, you know, we should go zone, or we should, you know, whatever you're thinking, like, just give it to me. And like, I only probably take less than 50%, probably like 20% of it and use it. But I just like the more. And so then, like, even at halftime, right? Like, halftime starts, we do a little coaches meeting before we go talk to the players, and they're just giving me all this stuff, and then I just write everything down and then cross everything off until I get to, like, you know, 2 or 3 things that I want to emphasize. And yeah, the assistant coaches, like, that was a big unlock for me compared to like my first 2 or 3 years. I guess it was because my assistant coaches at that time were still kind of learning, you know, it's all new, right, to them. So they're still like learning what the program was, what the system was that we were running. And to be honest, I was learning myself. I was changing a lot all the time. So how are they going to give me any kind of feedback? But once my assistant coaches did start giving me that feedback and stuff, like I felt like that definitely helped, even in the win-loss column. Like it definitely like turned into more wins for us. So let's talk a little bit more about other things that have changed since 2-3 years ago. Like, is anything changed as far as like what you've emphasized? Like we'll get into the X's and O's and like stuff that's changed there later, but like what else besides delegating? Like maybe like, is there anything that you feel like you've unlocked that's made you guys better?
I would say just kind of a weird one here, but like rest. I feel like I'm better at finding a balance between rest and when it's time to work, and not necessarily for myself specifically, but just for our group. Like my first couple of years, it was we're in the weight room all year round.
I remember you telling me that.
Twice a week, 3 days a week. Like games, like, and we never lift the day before a game, but like 2 days out, we're lifting. Like girls knew it, and I remember. It was actually the last year, the first year where we won that league championship. And at the end of the season, the girls were like, they were tired, and they're like, Coach, like, hey, we're pretty tired. And so I would try and taper down the workouts, but I would say, hey, like, we still need to do them because it's important for us to, to stay healthy, stay strong, don't want to get injured, all that stuff. But now I still believe in lifting in the season, but I'm more likely to be like, all right, how are we feeling? Trust that my players are going to tell me, truly how they're feeling, and that they're not just trying to be lazy, right? And if they're like, hey, we're hurting really bad, like, okay, let's take a day off, or let's just go stretch for 20 minutes today. Like, that's what we're going to do instead of lifting or whatever. And aiding in recovery, because now we stretch every day after practice. And now we didn't used to do that. I used to just tell them to do that, and realistically, probably none of them did. So now I etch out 15 minutes at the end of every practice, and we actually sit there and we stretch, and the girls are now asking for it. So this fall, as we started doing our workouts, they're like, Coach, when are we going to start implementing stretching again? Like, we want to be. So it's kind of a nice thing to see. So I'd say the rest and recovery is something we've unlocked that I think last year helped because, when you're going into CIF, you're playing like an extra, if you go to the championship at the state, you're playing like a month almost longer. And by the end of the season, I felt like we were held together with like string and bubble gum, and barely just functioning. But if I hadn't rested them, I don't think we would have lost some of those games because we would have been so tired we couldn't have competed.
Yeah, and I think too, like, I don't know what your rotation looks like, but most teams it's like 8. And what would you say? How many players are you rotating? Yeah, I mean
8, maybe 9 if I got a really good group.
Yeah, it could be more. It could be as many as you really want. Some guys are 5 in, 5 out. Go. But if you only got 8 players in your rotation for that CIF run, and some of them are playing on like a 90% ankle. Some of them got sore knees because they're growing or whatever, and that rest is so important. I would say for me, probably the biggest change is maybe scouting. I think I've gotten way into scouting, and for those CIF runs, like I think that has been a huge help. I mean, I know even last year we lost in the semis, but we were the 13th seeded team going against I think the number 1 or 2. And we had a chance to win. If we would have played a good game, we could have won that game. But we scouted them pretty tough. Their big man was averaging like 18, 20 a game. The game before put up like 27 against Templeton, who has like a 6'9" guy, and he's just a really good big man. And we held them to 7 points. We doubled them. We trapped them. But they were such a good team that they had counters. I mean, they were well coached, but they also had their guards stepped up. Guys that averaged 5 points a game were all of a sudden scored like 20 points because we were trapping the big. So they did a good job to beat us. But scouting has been a big one for me. When the CIF games come on, I'm watching 6-7 games, and I'm knowing every call. I'm knowing exactly what they're running on offense. I come prepared, like knowing who our matchups are, who's got the advantage in our matchups, where our disadvantage is, and all that kind of stuff. So I would say that's a big one for me. And it's hard in basketball because you play 28 games before playoffs even start, so it's hard to scout every single one, and sometimes you're in tournaments and stuff. But I think it's good to try to get ahead and get some game film, see what you got. Know if you know you have a game, you got 3 practices and they're going to zone you, then you got 3 practices to work on your zone offense, and so I think that's been a big one for me as far as that goes. Let's keep it going, huh? You got anything else to add to that? Any other things
Well,
you think
yeah.
have changed?
I was just going to say, kind of to double up on that, how important scouting is, especially, I mean, in college, I feel like the scouting is, everybody does it at a pretty high level. In high school, though, I don't really think that's the case. I think it's team to team. Some teams are really good at it and some are not. We've talked before, like we watch a lot of game film, and it's kind of become part of our culture now that the girls expect it, where, now I teach on campus now, so we watch at lunch. Like we sit as a team at lunch and watch film, and sometimes a game would be finish up and we'd be uploading it, and I'd get texts from the girls like, hey, coach, is the film up? And it's like later, after the game, and they're already wanting the film right away to watch it. And that's a cool thing to have. But kind of like an anecdote on how important the scouting can be is 2 of our games last year, it was our CIF semifinal game and then the first round of state. So the one to go to the championship and then the one right after. We played teams that we scouted and we're like, these teams can't shoot. And I'm a man-to-man coach. I mean, you know this. I don't like zone. I don't play zone. But we also had some pretty big, lanky like athletes. So we were just like, all right, we're just going to zone this team. Like, they're not shooters. We're going to pack it in and force them to shoot threes. And they ended up shooting like 3. The 2 teams combined shot like 3 for like 50 from 3, and we won both games by like 20+ points. And if we manned them, I don't know, maybe they had athletes. Like, for all I know, they might have gone by us. We don't know. We can't say for sure, but I can tell you that playing the zone helped us win, because anytime you get 2 teams shooting 3 for 50, you're probably going to have a pretty good chance, and we were cleaning up the boards. So the scouting was huge, and it was funny because I talked to a friend of mine who knew the team Roosevelt. He knew their coach, and we were talking, and he's like, dang, he's like, how'd you guys beat them by 20? Like, they're a good team, they're from out in Fresno, like they've been beating everybody pretty good. And I was like, well, they couldn't really shoot, and we just scouted that. And then he's like, I don't think I saw one team not play them in zone or play them in zone this whole year. He said everybody manned them. Everybody was so afraid of them that they manned them, and so they would just beat them to the hole every time. And I was like, to me, I'm like, why would you man a team that can't shoot? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. But anyways, it's just interesting. Like, some of these other coaches couldn't even make that adjustment, and to me, it was like a basic one. Like, yeah, of course they can't shoot. I'm gonna put a zone on them. So, anyways, that was just something to add to it, like how important scouting can be.
Yeah, it's a huge unlock. I was at that game, and I know exactly. I remember that. I was just being like, "What? Why is Alex playing zone for the first time?" And then I was like, "Oh!" By halftime, I was like, "Yeah, they can't shoot." But they did have some good players on that team. Like, no hate on that.
Yeah,
they had some really good players.
No, they could play. Yeah, for sure. No, they just couldn't do that one thing.
Yeah, as a coach, when you have a team that can't shoot, like, that's just your biggest nightmare. Actually, to be honest, that's even with a team that can shoot. When I see a team that's just going to sit in the zone the whole game, I'm just like, well, here we go. We're either going to blow this team out because we're going to light them up, or we're going to be off tonight. And that actually happened to us last year. We played Napomo, and they just zoned us the whole game. And we had shooters, and we lost, I think, by 2 or 3 points. And that was a game that we were supposed to beat them. And yeah, so I just hate when I see that. And it, on the other side, it makes you think, like, we're both man-to-man coaches, but I know in my program I got some real height coming up in the next couple years, so we might go zone more. I'm not afraid to do it. To me, it's a crapshoot. Like, as soon as the other team hits 1-3, it just freaks me out, and I always get out of it. But if you can weather the storm and just be okay with it, I think there's definitely a place for some zone defense. I know on the girls' side, you guys see it all the time. I talked to my buddy over here, and he's like, we're always like, oh, yeah, let's talk some X's and O's, some man offense, this new set. And it's like, we're just going to see zone all year. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I know. And I think that the flip side is, like, if you just sit in the zone all year, I think it's hard to be successful, like really successful. Like, I think you can beat, like you said, like, decent amount of teams because they won't shoot very well or whatever, and you'll survive, especially in high school. But, like, when you get to the playoffs and you get to better teams and they can shoot, or like they can run in, and you're with your zone, you don't box out very well, and they can get offensive boards or something like that. I think it's hard to be really successful, and that's why I just don't believe in it, because I'm like, look, I might use it for a game. If there's one game where I got that advantage, sure, but I'm not going to just play zone all year, and then I run into this team of snipers, and now it's like, well, we're done. Like, the game was over before it started because we can't guard them, Totally. I just don't like that. I don't want to be in that situation.
Yeah, no, I get that. I would also say that one change for me, as I was just kind of thinking as we're talking, was analytics. Like, I'm an analytics guy now for sure, like 100%. Not so much on, like, oh, we can't shoot mid-rangers and that kind of stuff. Like, it's not so much on that. It's just when we lose or when we win, no matter what, when the game's over, like I want to know why we won. And so, just all the basketball stuff like rebounding and field goal percentage, or, EFG, effective field goal percentage, all that kind of stuff, like the free throw factor, like all these different kind of new stats are things that I look at. And I like to compare like previous years, like overall stats to this year's stats. So I know like, the year, when we made the CIF finals and we won the league or whatever, like what was our, turnover percentage that year? What was our free throw percentage that year? All those kind of stats. And so I can look at our team now and I can say, oh, look, we're shooting, whatever, 60% from the free throw line. Like, okay, we need to like focus on that. Or our offensive rebound percentage is down. Because it's one thing to like look at my team and be like, we're like last year I was like, we're more so next year, but last year too, like or this year I guess I should say, we're short. We can't rebound. We're not gonna be able to rebound. But until I see the numbers, I don't really know how true that is. Because you can be tall and not box out and get out rebounded. So, is there any certain like stats that you've started to focus on more since I guess a couple years ago or anything?
I don't know. It's hard for me to say if there's like one specific stat. I mean, free throws, I would say free throw per shooting, maybe. I'm trying to focus a little bit more on that because I feel like that's something early on, like we did not shoot free throws well when I started coaching, and we're still need some improvement, but I think we've gotten better. So just focusing on that across the board. And then maybe I'm trying to think if there's anything else major. I mean, rebounding's always been a pretty big one, but I would say the first one that pops in my head is just free throw shooting, because I think it's just so many easy points that we leave on the board all the time, and all it takes is just a little bit of practice and a little bit of focus, and that's something that most people I feel like don't do on their own either. They don't just practice shooting free throws. So that would be the number one thing for me.
Yeah, and I think as coaches, as you evolve, like those are things you add to like your tool set. Like you'll probably always now have a little bit of more focus on free throws than you did when you first started. Or you'll always have a little bit more focus on whatever it is than when you started. And that's, for me, I'm trying to think, besides just like looking at the stats, I would say like more small-sided games, like a lot more like live stuff in our practices. Like we do like live layup drills basically every time now, where there's defense instead of just doing, just no defense on air, 1-on-0 layups or whatever it is. That's probably been something that's been a big change for us. I mean, it just depends at what level, I mean, when I'm coaching youth kids that can't make a left-hand layup, then we don't really need the defense. But with the varsity boys, I feel like they need the defense, and not only does it help, but I think it's more fun when you turn things into games. So I think that's definitely something that has changed. Okay, let's talk a little bit about playing style. Like I know back when we talked years ago, you were running a lot of ball screens, and now I've came to a couple of your games last year. I didn't see as many ball screens. So what would you say has changed, like playing style wise?
Definitely our main offense, like you said, used to be the European ball screen offense, and it is still one of our two main offenses that we run, but really the main one we have kind of deferred to now is just like a 4-out 1-in motion with a lot of either dribble drive elements, but not pure dribble drive, but elements of it, and then some pass and cut, pass and screen away, so kind of just a mix of things that we just call it motion. But really spacing 4-out. I mean, I've had the last couple of years I had the luxury of having a really good post player, and so we would go 4-out, and I know typically in dribble drive they like the post to be weak side, so that you could drive and dump it down. But she was so good with her back to the basket that I had told her, like, if you can go post on the strong side, go post, and so that was a luxury that we had. But probably this year and moving forward, we'll go back to maybe a little bit more of a traditional style where the post is opposite, because she graduated, so now we don't have that same option. But yeah, definitely spacing the floor. But some of that has come with kind of what we were talking earlier. Just everyone plays zone. And so it's hard to run a lot of continuity ball screen against a zone. I mean, you can do it, but it's just not as easy. And what I've found is the longer the girls have been playing with me, the more they understand the decisions they need to make when they're running motion. And so now when I call it out, like they know more or less like where to pass, cut, how to move the ball, how to screen. It's not perfect, but my first year, I remember we tried to run motion and it was just like robots. Like they just passed the ball around the perimeter for 30 seconds and then the last second chucked up a shot, you know? But now they're actually looking to attack angles and backdoor, and, you know, sometimes the big will just come up and randomly set a ball screen, and it's like, okay, they're actually just playing basketball. It's almost like pickup, you know, but with a little more organization than that. So that, I think, has shifted quite a bit since my first couple of years.
Nice. Yeah, I like I said, I saw some games, and you had the good post player down there that it seemed like you guys got her the ball a lot. Like I thought that, like, I always feel like when there's a good big, they still never get the ball. You know, like it's just like it's the way guards are. It's a tough pass to, first of all, to feed the post is kind of scary. You might turn it over, and then second of all, you know, as a guard, you're just not looking there. You're looking for like cutters, and you're looking the screen away. You're not looking like for the person that's just literally posted right in front of you. So how are you able to get the ball in there so much? Like drills or just emphasis? Like how did you do that?
So some of them were, like you said, like small-sided drills where we would put someone on the perimeter. We'd put like a guard on defense right at the elbow, you know, someone on offense right in the slot basically. So the person, you know, guarding the ball, and then you have an offensive player on the wing and then the post, and we'd toss the ball to the wing, make that guard basically close out. Like that one person was playing defense for everyone pretty much. Close out, and then we started with that, and then they'd close out, and then the offense player would catch on the wing, and they'd have to like ball fake, bounce pass in, you know, or fake low, pass high, whatever it is. And then eventually we start adding in like a defensive player on the post as well. So just trying to get them like realistic game like looks, and emphasizing like, hey, if Taylor was our post, if Taylor's one-on-one, get her the ball, because she's probably better than 99% of the posts that we're going to play, you know? And so if you can get her the ball down there, one, she was unselfish enough to kick it back out. And I think that was also a big thing, is like she would get doubled a lot and she would kick. And so the guards knew, hey, if I toss it in, I'm actually probably going to get a wide open shot. And then if they left her, it's like, okay, she's going to go to work and we're going to get 2 points. And what I really liked the last few years is that the team is very unselfish, and so they don't really care who scores. And so because of that, it doesn't matter if it's Taylor's night to get 25, great. If it's a guard's night to get 25, then that's great for her. Like, as long as they're playing together to win, that was really I think the key thing, is building that trust. I think the drills helped and it taught them how to do it, but I think the main thing is trust. And if you don't have trust, or if you're selfish, then I think that's why, like you said, a lot of times posts don't get touches, because the guards have the ball in their hands and they're like, well, I could give it in there or I could take my own shot, you know, and they end up pulling a hezzy three instead of looking for the wide open post player.
Yeah, and also, too, you have post players that are like black holes, too, where if it goes in, they're going to just shoot, miss, get their own rebound, miss, you know. Passing bigs. I love passing bigs. I love dribble drive offense. Like, I am obsessed with dribble drive offense. But I'm the same as you. I don't like putting my post player on the weak side, because I like post play, too. Like, I want the ball to go inside. And in the past years, I mean, many years now, our post players been getting a lot of assists, and they've been great passers out of the post. So I think that's a huge part of an offense, is getting the ball in the post and letting them pass. So I love it.
Yeah.
Like I said, for us, I would say like our motion offenses are very similar, but different in their ways too. But ours is basically our own version of dribble drive with some Princeton and some motion elements, some read and react stuff, I guess. But yeah, do you ever bring your post player to the high post?
Sometimes, yeah. Not as much against the man. It would depend. If it was last year's post, she was so good in the low block that we didn't bring her up a whole lot, unless they were playing like a trapping zone or something like that. Then we would put her up there. I had my 4, you know, Fiona, who when she would go to the 5, I would bring her up sometimes, because she was very mobile, so she could catch at the high post and rip an attack. So I will do it, but it just depends on who the post player is.
Got you. Nice. Yeah. That's I think where we differ, is my post player is at the high post a lot. But yeah, it would depend. I mean, if I had a traditional 5, which I haven't had really ever, then probably wouldn't bring them up as much. But yeah. Okay. Let's see. So we talked a little bit about X's and O's. Let's talk. I always had a quick question too that popped in my head. So when you guys see zone, you like to just kind of stick with your man principles: 4 out, 1 in. But how do you get the ball to the high post?
It depends. Are you asking like specifically if we stay in the 4 out, 1 in?
Yeah. For some reason, I thought I remember you saying you guys will stick with that sometimes when you see zone.
We do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we do sometimes. I just didn't know, because we run another one that's like high-low option. So, but if we go 4 out, 1 in, then normally the big will have more opportunity to float a little bit. So That's where I'll say, hey, like, if the ball gets worked around, like, you can flash up real quick and try and get a catch and see if we can, suck the defenders in on you, and then we got a cut backdoor or kick out to a shooter. So that's definitely something that was an option there as well. But sometimes, again, even just working that high-low kind of triangle by herself, she might command so much attention that she'd get two players on her in the zone, and it was like the ball wouldn't even go to her. It would just be a skip, and it was so open on the backside because everyone was worried about her, and so our shooters would get wide open shots too, which was also really nice.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Let's talk a little bit about maybe any other changes, maybe changes in like leadership style or coaching style. I'll give you a little bit of time to think while I talk about mine. Like, I know for me, one thing that's changed a lot is making the main things the main things. So before, I was like so like into the X's and O's and stuff that I was really changing. I would change stuff all the time. Like, this is how we offensive rebound, and then I'd like learn a whole bunch of stuff about some other kind of thing. I would change it like halfway through season and stuff. Or I would just worried about the man offense only, and I would just focus all my time on new sets and new man offense and this kind of stuff, because that stuff's enjoyable as a coach. I feel like one thing as far as my leadership style maybe goes is changes, like the main things are the main things now, like, and that this kind of goes back to the analytics, like, the rebounding percentage, the turnover percentage, how we're guarding, and I'm trying to think off the top of my head real quick, maybe there's one other thing. Like, those are the only things that I try to talk about and focus on. So for me, like, that's been a big change. That's helped a lot, is just keep the main things and just focus on the main things. That's helped us a lot. So anything that you can think of as far as leadership style, or just, I don't know, anything else?
Maybe leadership style, one of them would be with my captains, getting more, I guess, maybe giving some more like autonomy to them and getting more feedback from them. So finding out, the pulse of the team, or asking them, like, what do you think about, tomorrow's practice? How are we feeling? Like, are we tired? Are we fresh? And trusting that, again, like, they're captains for a reason, and that they want to do the right thing, and that they're not going to try and cut corners. Because I think a lot of, at least for me, and maybe I shouldn't speak for all coaches, but I do feel that a lot of coaches sometimes have trouble with that trust, because they feel that the kids are going to cut corners, because maybe they don't realize, like, hey, yeah, it takes a little extra work if you want to win, and I know you want to go home and hang out, but if you don't show up for practice or do the extra 15 minutes of whatever drill it is, like, you might not perform the next day. So that's something that I've learned to try and do. I've never been one to switch a lot. When you were talking about you might halfway through the season switch this or that, I've never been like that. So I've always been one, like, here's what we do. And, like, I may add layers every once in a while, but I would never change the whole system. So I can't really say that's different for me. But again, it kind of, I guess, almost goes into that delegation again, right? Like, having a little more hands off the wheel and trusting that my players know what they're doing and getting, like, the group thoughts. But at the end of the day, like, still making the final decision myself.
Nice. Okay, cool. So as we start to kind of wrap this episode up, let's try to come up with a piece of advice for coaches to embracing change. I'll go first to give you a little time to think. I would say try to get better at one thing every year. Like, if there's just one major piece that you can add to the program every year, then you're going to just continue to get better. Your program's going to continue to get better. And that could be anything. Like, it could be, going from, or, not having an overnight stay one year, and all of a sudden now the next season you're going to have an overnight stay at a tournament and stay in a hotel, and that's a new piece that you've added to the program. Or maybe your freshman team doesn't have practice uniforms, and now you're going to do some fundraising and get practice uniforms for your freshman team the next year. Or maybe it's X's and O's wise. Maybe you haven't been scouting teams in the past, and the next year you're going to start scouting every single game and having a meeting before every single game, going over the scout. I think if there's just like one or two, just a couple pieces, maybe even just one, that you can add to your program every year, by year 5, 6, 7, you're going to be rolling. You're going to have all these different pieces in place that are going to make a difference, and hopefully make a difference in the win-loss column, or if not the win-loss column, then just the participation column. Maybe there's not a lot of interest, and now that you've added these new pieces, there's more interest, and the program is thriving. So that's my, I guess, one piece of advice. You got anything?
Well, I think that's a really great piece of advice. I think that's something that people we want to rush to the final product, and a lot of times don't realize, people are like, I want to build a program, I want to change the program, and it's like, that's going to take like 5 years, like you said.
Yeah.
Maybe longer, but like probably 4 or 5 years is pretty standard if you really want to build a program and a culture. But I would say one thing that I believe that the longer I'm coaching, the more I'm thinking this is like, don't overcomplicate things. I used to kind of do the same thing with what you were talking about, and I still do. I watch a bunch of film, I'll watch these plays, I'll be like, oh, this would be a really cool play to throw in, or this would be a new set, or a new this, that, and the other. And I would mix it up a little bit more, and now I find that I've fleshed out my plays. Like, there are plays that I used to a couple of years ago or 3 years ago that I'm like, these, I don't ever call these, or I rarely do, and they don't work, so why do I even teach them to the kids? It's a waste, it's a waste of time, and I'm overcomplicating it, because now they're having to remember like 13 different sets, and we're using like 4 of them, So find your, like, kind of what you said, your main things, find your like main sets, and then every year look at them and evaluate them, and whatever it is, your offense, your defense, evaluate those plays that you're running and see like what is good, what isn't, and what do it's okay to get rid of stuff. Like, it might have worked 5 years ago, and it might not work anymore, and it's okay. But you've got to constantly adapt, and you have to grow as a coach, because if you get stuck in like, this is what I used to do, 10 years, 15, 20 years from now, like, the game's going to change again. And if you can't adapt with it, you're going to become obsolete, and the program is going to start going the other direction. So I think that's the big advice, is don't overcomplicate things, and always look to grow in a way that's helpful for your program.
Nice. Yeah, I agree with that. And I can relate to that too. The plays that you spend probably, in total 20 hours, or maybe not exaggeration, 10 hours of practice time that you only run like once or twice a season, like when you should be doing box out drills, that'll actually get you wins. So good advice there. All right. Well, hey, if you are still watching at this point on YouTube, you might as well hit subscribe, because you've obviously enjoyed the episode. So please subscribe there and leave us any comments. We'd love to get some ideas in the comments section of different topics that we can cover on the podcast. And if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, you can follow us as well there. And with all that said, we will see you guys in the next episode.